Chairperson Nadeau and members of the committee. My name is Joshua Sear, and I'm the CEO of Empower, a software company based in Northern Virginia that is helping thousands of rideshare drivers in the DC metro area work for themselves and earn a sustainable living. Empower provides drivers with software and support services that enable them to set their own rates and get 100% of their hard-earned fares. With Empower, drivers are the customer, and they are provided with dedicated US-based support to help them run their own businesses. Over the past 3.5 years, our customers have provided over 5 million rides to 250,000 riders, often serving the district's most historically underserved communities. Last week alone, nearly 2,000 drivers using Empower's software and services provided over 60,000 rides to 20,000 riders in DC. Many of our customers are making thousands of dollars more per month than they would otherwise be making working for Uber or Lyft. At the same time, riders are saving money by booking rides from drivers who use Empower. Because drivers get 100% of what riders pay, instead of the 50 to 60% paid by Uber or Lyft, drivers are able to charge riders a bit less and still make more money than they would otherwise make driving for a rideshare company. Riders love that drivers get 100% of what they pay. They also like that they can use the Empower app to request a same gender or favorite driver, which many say provides them with a greater sense of safety. I'm testifying today to help ensure that drivers who choose to work for themselves continue to have the ability to provide affordable private for hire transportation services to the tens of thousands of district residents who rely upon them. Drivers are some of the hardest working folks in our community, and I was moved to start Empower by so many of them telling me that they didn't feel that they mattered to the companies they were working for. Drivers in DC are tired of working for Uber and Lyft. They want to work for themselves. In fact, the freedom to do so is exactly why many of them came to this country in the first place. I believe that the tens of thousands of drivers who serve the DC community should not be forced to work for anyone, let alone a company that has publicly stated its goal is to automate them out of existence. Electricians, plumbers, lawyers, barbers, accountants, physical therapists, architects, carpenters, and other hardworking professionals all have the freedom to work for themselves and set the rates for the services they provide. Drivers unequivocally should be treated the same way. Empower and tens of thousands of drivers that service DC respectfully ask the City Council and the DFHV to ensure that drivers have the same inherent freedoms as other service professionals in the district. In conclusion, I want to thank Chair Nadeau, the committee members, Deputy Mayor Anderson, and their staff for meeting with us to discuss for-hire vehicle policies in the district. We look forward to continuing to work with members of the committee, the Deputy Mayor, the future Director of the DFHV, and all of your staff to both ensure that drivers have the right to work for themselves and to assist those drivers who choose to do so with complying with whatever reasonable regulations the district believes should apply to the hardworking individuals who want to compete with Uber and Lyft instead of working for Uber or Lyft. Thank you, and I'm happy to answer your questions.
Mr. Sear, Department of For-Hire Vehicles recently filed a new cease and desist order against your operations here. Do you have any comment on that?
Thank you for the question. The cease and desist that was filed indicated that the reason why Empower posed some risk to the public was because they impounded a driver's vehicle and that driver was not able to get to their doctor's appointment. There's no requirement that the DFHV impound the vehicles of hardworking drivers who are trying to make a living driving for themselves. They chose to do that. I believe that driver actually sent a letter to the mayor's office making clear that he found the behavior of the Department of For-Hire Vehicles enforcement officer inappropriate. We have seen and been made aware of a number of examples of very aggressive nighttime stops by very armed SWAT team-like officers of the Department of For-Hire Vehicles who have stopped drivers seemingly without any reason, have demanded that they provide them with their phones, which are violations of their Fourth Amendment rights, and basically done what they can to try to scare drivers into not working for themselves and forcing them to continue to work for companies that don't seem to care very much about them. And so, fortunately, these incidents are fairly rare, but we have been made aware of some. And, we hope to work with whoever the new head of the DFHV is to ensure that those stop and work together with the council to ensure that drivers are able to, without harassment, work for themselves, just like a plumber, an electrician, a doctor, a lawyer, or anyone else in the district. So that's our position.
So I'm struggling to see why Empower as a platform would not meet the definition for a private vehicle for hire company as defined in the DC code, which with operators classified as private vehicle for hire operators respectively. Is there a reason you think those definitions wouldn't apply?
Yeah, so we think that the statutory language is pretty unclear. In fact, DC Court of Appeals, which overturned the cease and desist order that was issued back in November of 2020, because they found that there was no harm, also felt that the statutory language that the council passed when they were attempting to regulate Uber and Lyft was pretty unclear. They did seem to find and conclude that it did not appear to them that the council provided for a regulatory framework through which an individual driver who wants to work for themselves and not work for a rideshare company could do so. And so that's part of the reason why I'm here today, is to encourage the council and make clear that we want to work with the council and the mayor's office and the Department of For-Hire Vehicles to ensure that the regulatory framework allows drivers, just like every other service professional in the city, to work for themselves and set the value of their services. There are no other service professionals in the district who are not allowed to work for themselves and who are forced to work for somebody else and are not able to determine their own worth. I think it's a human right. It's an economic right of these folks. These are some of the hardest working people in the city. An overwhelming majority of them come from underserved communities. Many of them come from all over the world to seek the very freedom which seemingly the Department of For-Hire Vehicles is unclear as to whether or not they have that right.
So your drivers don't consider themselves private vehicle for hire operators?
I'm not sure exactly how the thousands of drivers who are using our service personally view themselves. I don't think that's not the thing that's at the top of their mind. The thing that's at the top of their mind is making sure that they can put food on the table, that they can take care of their families, they can support their children. And they're not able to do that right now working for Uber and Lyft. And that's the reason why thousands of them are working for themselves. They're making more money, and they're able to provide the exact same service to riders in the exact same vehicles, and they're able to do so at a price point that's lower than what Uber and Lyft are charging, because they're getting 100% of the fare instead of 50 or 60% of the fare. And so they can set their rates a little bit lower than what Uber and Lyft charge and still make considerably more money. And they're doing a service to the district's residents. There are hundreds of thousands of residents have used Empower's app to book rides directly from drivers. And they're doing so because two reasons. They're saving money, and they really like the fact that the driver gets 100% of what they pay. It's a pretty poor experience. If you're in the back of an Uber and Lyft and, you as a rider, you ask the driver, well, I paid $25 for this ride. How much did you make? And the driver tells you $12, $13. It's an even worse experience, of course, for the driver. But riders don't like that either. And they like the fact that they're able to, that the driver is receiving 100% of what they pay for the ride that's being provided.
So let me ask this one other way. According to the Department of For-Hire Vehicles filing, The Court of Appeals affirmed that the service provided by Empower is categorically a private vehicle for hire company and falls under the regulatory purview of DFHV. Do you disagree with that?
Well, we certainly disagree in part with the finding of the Court of Appeals. I would disagree with the way in which the DFHV characterized that holding, but I do agree that the Court of Appeals recently held that it believed that there does not appear to be that the council did not provide for a way for drivers to work for themselves in competition with Uber and Lyft. And that as such, they assume therefore that any company that was assisting those drivers in working for themselves must have been intended to be part of, regulated in the exact same way as Uber and Lyft are regulated. We obviously disagree with that reasoning, and we think that it's incumbent upon the council to make very clear that they believe that drivers have a right to work for themselves, whether or not they use Empower to help them do so, or whether or not they want to put their phone number in the white pages and say, hey, look, I want to provide rides in my car. Here's what I want to charge for my services, right? And of course, we completely understand that the district has an interest in regulating that activity and requiring that those individuals perhaps be licensed by the district and comply with certain requirements. And Empower software is already fully capable of helping drivers to comply with those types of requirements. The same requirements perhaps that they impose upon larger companies like Uber and Lyft.
Do drivers who use Empower need to go through any kind of permitting process currently?
So I guess it appears from our prior conversations, and we haven't had conversations directly, informal with the Department of For-Hire Vehicles in a few years. Back when we had those conversations, there was some lack of clarity on the department's part as to whether or not there was a mechanism by which a driver who wanted to, again, drive for themselves could register with the DFHV or with the district and do so. It appears that the position of the Department of For-Hire Vehicles is that is not possible currently. And it appears that the DC Court of Appeals agreed with that conclusion.
What about trainings?
I'm sorry?
Trainings
Trainings
for drivers?
I'm sorry. I'm not sure I understand the question. What about trainings for drivers?
Do they go through any?
Do drivers go through trainings?
Mm-hmm.
They have to obviously have a driver's license to drive a vehicle. We don't employ drivers. Drivers don't work for us. They're not our independent contractors. They're our customers. And we're providing them with the ability to set their own rates, get 100% of the fare. We provide them with a platform where there are riders that are requesting their services. We provide them with customer support services, technical support services if they have difficulty with the app. We provide them with payment processing services that help them so that they can get paid by riders. But we don't train drivers how to drive a car. I'm not sure.
No, but you could train them how to be an entrepreneur who's driving customers.
Oh, sure. I see where you're going with that, with the question. No, we absolutely have, and we are increasing the amount of materials, video materials that we are creating for drivers precisely to do that, for them to be able to run their own business. For them, we do Zooms, information sessions. We do monthly driver appreciation events where we take their questions, answer their questions, provide them with updates on the product and the service, give them some tips on how they can improve their business. When it comes to be tax time, even though we don't issue them a W-2 or a 1099, we provide them with summaries of their earnings and a link to tax preparation providers who are willing to provide discounts to drivers. And so, our goal is to ultimately be able to provide drivers with all of the support services that they need to run and grow their own business. Just like, companies that might provide support to an electrician who needs help, filing their taxes or managing their books or finding customers. Same thing.
But those people would be helping them with regulatory compliance.
Yeah, and as I said in my testimony, our software is set up to assist drivers in complying with whatever regulations the district or the Department of For-Hire Vehicles believes should be assessed and applied to individual drivers. So, for example, I believe that the district requires Uber and Lyft to provide certain information about rides to the district. There's our software is if the district determined that it was made sense for individual drivers to provide that information about their rides, our software is already set up to facilitate the provision of that information on behalf of drivers to the district. There are fees that are assessed on Uber and Lyft's services. If the council determined that the fees assessed on individual drivers should be similar, or there should be fees assessed on them like there are on Uber and Lyft services, our software is already set up to facilitate the transfer of those fees in real time, frankly, instantaneously, at the end of each and every ride to whatever account or agency account that it should be sent to in a way that can be audited in real time. My understanding is currently the district receives a check either once a quarter or once a year from companies like Uber and Lyft, and I have no idea how that's verified that the amount they're paying is accurate. But our software is already set up to make it such that every single ride, however much it should be assessed on the ride, is transferred in real time on behalf of the driver.
What are the insurance requirements for drivers using Empower?
So we require drivers to provide us with proof of insurance. We do not read their policy. Many drivers, we also let drivers know that we don't provide insurance, and that they should check with their insurance provider to make sure that they're covered. And if they feel they need additional coverage, they should, of course, purchase additional coverage. There are many drivers, I believe, that get rideshare riders. Some drivers have full-blown commercial insurance policies. And that's also an area where we would like to work with the city to ensure that all those drivers have the requisite coverage beyond their own personal insurance to make sure it covers them when they are providing private for hire services to riders.
What taxes and for hire vehicle surcharges apply to rides booked through Empower?
Well, according to the oral arguments in the DC Court of Appeals, when we tried to explain how a number of the provisions of the existing statutes don't make sense with respect to Empower, one of those provisions was, Uber and Lyft are required to remit a certain percentage of the bookings that they collect from riders. Well, we don't collect any bookings from riders. We don't make any money from riders. And the DC Court of Appeals, one of the judges said, well, then that should be a very easy requirement for you to meet. You don't owe anything. Now, again, our point there was we don't think that that's what the council intended. And that's why we don't think the council intended to treat Empower the same way that it treats a company that provides transportation services like Uber and Lyft. But I guess to answer your question directly, according to the DC Court of Appeals, at least in their oral argument, they suggested that there is no amount that Empower should be paying to the district.
So you're not paying any?
No, but if the district would like to figure out a way for us to work with the drivers to facilitate those payments on transportation services, like I said, our software is already set up to do it. So that can happen immediately, effectively. And drivers understand that there may be taxes assessed on the services that they provide. I would argue, since they are paying, income taxes and are, investing their money back into the local economy, that they probably shouldn't necessarily be taxed at the same rate that a company like Uber and Lyft are taxed at, which don't invest back into the community. But again, I leave that to the council to figure out what they believe would be an appropriate tax on the services being provided by individual drivers.
And what do drivers pay to use the platform?
It ranges. So in DC, we currently have 3 subscription options. There is a what we call Empower Monthly Platinum, which is a monthly subscription where the drivers pay $350 a month upfront at the beginning of the subscription period, and that provides them with total access to the platform. They're getting 100% of the fares. We provide them with even some premium support services. We've got 2 other plans as well. We have what we call the Empower Daily option, which is a daily, as it sounds, a daily option where a driver pays $25 a day for 24-hour access to the platform. And so if you're a driver maybe that only drives on a couple Saturdays a month, that option may make a lot of sense for you. And then we have a third option, which is called Empower Monthly Flex, which, as the name suggests, is a flexible option where drivers are able to pay the monthly subscription fee in $50 installments. So if you're a driver that maybe you don't want to pay $350 all up front, you want that financial flexibility, that option may appeal to you. Also, if you don't end up driving as much, you may end up paying less than $350. And we're very proactive with drivers. Drivers have the right to pick whatever subscription option they want, but we want drivers to make as much money as possible. Again, we don't make any money from riders, and so our success is fully aligned with drivers, and we want to make sure that they're doing as well as possible. Our company doesn't want to make an extra $50 or $100 from a driver in a given month because they're on a platform that doesn't make as much economic sense for them. We would much rather them make more money, of course, and be our customer for as long as they want to drive for a living.
Thank you for your testimony.
You're welcome. Thank you.
Sure.